Okay, can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Town of Hilton Head Island, Gullah Geechee Land and Cultural Preservation Task Force Special Meeting, the September the 1st, 2020. The meeting is being conducted virtually in accordance with Town Council Emergency Ordinance 2020-13. If you live on the Town Public Meeting Facebook page, this meeting video recording will be made available on the town's website. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Sharice, are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, we are.
Would you please call the roll?
Levon Stevens,
Present.
Carolyn McVitie,
Present.
Joyce Wright.
She won't be able to make it today.
Ibrahim Abdul Malik.
Yes, his mic.
He's muted. You're muted.
All right. Martha Davis,
Present.
Palmer Simmons,
Present.
Johnny Green,
She won't be able to make it today.
Teresa White,
I
and
am expecting to. She's going to
sorry?
try to join.
Okay.
Teresa is going to try to join us.
Todd Theodore,
Present.
Okay, we have an agenda, and everyone had an opportunity to look over the agenda, and I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We got a couple of seconds here. Sharice, will you please call the roll?
Carolyn McVitie,
Present.
Ibrahim
Yes.
Malik,
Yes.
No. Go ahead.
okay. Ibrahim, is that a yes?
Oh, yes.
Martha Davis,
Yes.
Palmer Simmons,
Yes.
Todd Theodore,
Yes.
and Levon Stevens.
Yeah. Okay, the next item we have on our agenda is citizen comment.
Public comments concerning items will be submitted electronically via the open town hall portal. The portal closed at noon Monday, August 31st, 2020, prior to the scheduled meeting. 2 comments were made by the public and were provided to the task force and made a part of the official record. Citizens were provided the option to sign up for public comment, participating by phone during the meeting. The comment period closed on Monday, August 31st, 2020, prior to the scheduled meeting. There was 1 request to phone in with public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. And as many of you know, we had a meeting last week and the last couple of weeks to review the work that has been done by staff concerning Historic Neighborhoods Preservation Overlay District. And I know we had a few questions and we had some concerns. I want to encourage all of us as we continue to work together to make some progress here.
Hello.
And I'm sorry, is there a problem? Okay. Again, we're trying to make some progress here, and we certainly are trying to work together with the staff and our task force, and certainly with input from our community and from the public. While we are very anxious to get something done, as we say, we also want to be very careful about the work we're doing here, and to be very sensitive to the history of this town and in this community. And I know that there are a lot of sensitive issues that we're talking about. And I just remind us historically that there was a lot of things already existing before there was a town of Hilton Head. And even in the development of the town of Hilton Head, there were some areas of our community that were not really considered during that time. And what we have learned from the report from the consultants that we had about a year and a half ago, that we're trying to make some things right. The purpose of this task force is the preservation of the culture. Here on Hilton Head, we made a priority by town council a couple of years ago at one of their retreats. That is the genesis of why we're here. And I just remind everybody of that little bit of background and context of what we're working in and what we're trying to do to create a balance of how we live, how we use our land, and how we coexist in our community. And it seems like a lot of times some folks didn't have the same opportunity as other people who have had, and that is also some of the challenging work that we as a task force have been tasked to do. With that, I will turn it over to staff, and we have the next item on the agenda is review and recommendation for the Historic Neighborhoods Preservation Overlay District.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by reviewing the updates that have been made to the Historic Preservation Overlay District amendments. Staff is referred to the consultant report to make sure that the amendments reflect the reductions, setbacks, and buffers and access that will work with some of the smaller and more irregular areas, state parcels that are in the historic area. Staff worked to make sure also that the amendments preserve the native island traditions of communal living, and those were addressed in the compound, the family compound, and the family subdivision. So also to allow for more homes to be built, I'd like to review that higher density has been proposed for rezoning for RM4 properties for them to be RM6, meaning that now you'll allow for 6 units per acre. Secondly, today I thought it was important that we talk about zoning and its purpose. And at this time, I'd like to share my screen with you and pull up the zoning map, if we can. Yes, please. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to talk about zoning and the purpose of it. If you see that your map has several different colors that illustrate which areas are residential, which commercial, and also industrial areas. And I think once we have this discussion it will better illustrate that zoning is not random but very purposeful, particularly with Hilton Head Island. So when we consider zoning on the island, we consider several factors. Existing conditions, for example, what's traffic like in these areas, what borders these properties, and is this residential, commercial, industrial? We also consider the health, welfare, and safety of citizens. This also includes traffic. Is this flood prone? And this is something especially we pay attention to now with hurricane season approaching. Also, regard for the property owner itself and your neighbors. Other things to consider are the fragile environment and ecology, because this is, after all, a barrier island. So the ability we have to look at what areas are able to handle certain types of development, such as marshes, need to have more careful consideration. Also, look at historic conditions. One thing I learned from my grandfather, who was a farmer and fisherman on the island, is that you don't take more from the land than it gets. So, also, Native Islanders have historically done this. So this needs to be respected when we are considering talking about which areas need more density. So to this end, I'd like to talk about what we talked about at the last meeting. There were some questions about rezoning some areas in the Chaplain neighborhood to water-oriented mixed use. Let's talk about what water-oriented mixed use is. That's your light blue areas on the map, if you can see. This is to recognize, actually, it's the top part of the map. The darker color, is that correct? Okay, the darker blue on top of the map. So you'll see that towards the top, to the top right of the map. You can move the map over. Oh, it's that one. Yeah. These darker blue colors right there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So looking at the wrong map. So up on the top of your map, your dark blue colors are your water-oriented mixed-use areas. And so what it says currently is that it's to recognize that certain lands that are special water-oriented sites and such have the unique ability to water-oriented commercial and residential development. In order to service the residents of these lands and to serve the transient boat and minor transit use of component of the district, water-oriented commercial uses are permitted. So it's not just that you live near the water source or you see a water source, but you actually have the ability to use that water source. Marshfront is the area that was discussed at the last meeting. If we can slide that down. Those are your light blue sites right in that area there. So the purpose of this is that this provides a mixed-use residential, institutional, and commercial purpose. Development should take advantage of the views from Broad Creek. Permitted uses in this district are intended to complement this area and its relationship to the headwaters of Broad Creek, where environmental, aesthetic, or traffic concerns are significant. As such, we don't want to make these areas too dense because there are traffic concerns, and you don't want to ruin the aesthetics of that particular area. So currently, marshfront zoning is presently on major arterials, 4 dwelling units per acre, and that's on your William Hilton Parkway side. Also, it allows for 8 dwelling units with at least 3 acres. Along other streets, for example, on Marshland Road, that presently allows 10 dwelling units per acre with at least 3 acres, and it allows for 6 dwelling units per acre. So staff here is proposing that the density along the major arterial will go from 4 dwelling units to 6 dwelling units per acre, just like in the RM6 zoning. So the next area I would like to talk about, there were questions about where the home occupation section. Based on the comments received, there needs to be some clarification as to what the home occupation section entails. So the purpose is that it remains residential in look. We don't want to make these areas too commercial. Home occupation has limited uses in its base districts, and this will hold for the overlay as well. That means the overlay will not allow uses that are not currently in the base district. So the purpose of the home occupation is to fall in line as to what has been traditionally done culturally, regard to people who live on the land and work there. Anything else more than that would need to go in its appropriate districts, because again, we want to keep it residential in appearance. The next question I'd like to address was the way you calculate property. If we can do that screen, there we go. So you have your property acreage times your dwelling unit per acre, which is in the LMO, and your allowable dwelling units equals your allowable dwelling units. So property acreage times dwelling units per acre equals allowed dwelling units. So for example, if you have 1 acre times 6 dwelling units per acre, you come out with the answer of 6 dwelling units per acre. Same with the 2 acres times 6 dwelling units gets you 12. Now, with most properties, you're not going to get your exact acreage, 1 acre, 2 acre. So for example, if you have properties that's 0.37 acres, you multiply that times your 6 dwelling units per acre, and that gets you 2.22, which means that it will be round down to 2 dwelling units per acre. So it will always, regardless, be rounded down when you're calculating property. That's what we talked, all of this is what we talked about at our last meeting. Finally, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for resending the comments made concerning the Gullah community. It's always important to make sure that we remain focused on these issues. Some were not specific to the overlay, but staff does recognize that there are more projects that need to be implemented. So we would like to get this started, this recommendation passed today, so that people can start taking advantage of what the overlay brings. So I'm asking that a recommendation be brought forth today to send the the overlay to LMO committee. Thank you very much. The next thing is we'll do our citizen comment before we move on to the discussion from the task force, if we could. Mr. Scott, are you on?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. If you can give your comments, you have 3 minutes to do so. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify with the statements that you made about the marshfront zoning in Chaplain. As it stands right now, even as you just mentioned, the property going from 4 units per acre up to 6, it will still have the lowest density on the island for a mixed-use zone. Stony currently has 10 units per acre, and the marshfront, the waterfront mixed use actually has 16 units per acre. So I just wanted to clarify that even with the intended bumpage from 4 to 6, it would still have the lowest density for the marshfront or any type of mixed-use zone on the island. So to begin, once again, this government continues to push Native Gullah issues to the side. It was stated during the last task force meeting that natives need to tell the town what they want. The Gullah natives have been telling the government what they need ever since Hilton Head was incorporated in 1983. The town approved the Gullah Geechee Task Force over 3 years ago because Nan threatened the town with a demonstration during the annual PGA golf tournament. Formation of the task force, hiring a consultant, and hiring of the historic overlay administrator was to be considered a compromise between the natives and the town in order for the town to begin resolving outstanding issues throughout the Gullah community. Land use restrictions, increased taxes, zoning, density, heirs property issues, cultural education, infrastructure, and sustainable economic development opportunities are just a few of the ongoing issues in which the Gullah natives have been pleading for. Today, after 3 years of timeless effort and commitment by the task force and community members, once again, this government is showing the lack of respect for the Native Gullah needs. Let's look at all the efforts in which has taken place in regards to the workforce housing overlay district. The government made sure that there were always enough information provided to the community. Packages were prepared and the process has been flowing. The overlay district is now moving through the various department boards. Yet the town approved the task force and consultants' recommendations back in November. Staff has acquired case studies from the ongoing issues throughout the Gullah Geechee community, but there hasn't been any efforts to begin resolving these issues. Now, the town is trying to rush an incomplete document through the various boards for approval with tons of unanswered questions. Why? So that the government can say that they did something? If there's a proposal to vote to move recommendations forward, where's the complete package for the task force and the community to review prior to a vote? Give the task force and the Gullah community the same respect in which have been given to previous initiatives passed. I'm just about finished. How do we expect people to vote on something that they have not seen? During the previous task force meeting, multiple questions have been asked, yet staff wasn't able to answer them. Native Gullah's needs remain to be on the back burner, and shoving an incomplete package into our faces for approval once again solidifies the lack of respect this government continues to show the Gullah Native community. As stated many times by elder Gullah natives, they love the culture, but not the people. Our people deserve and demand more respect from this limited service government. And to the town of Hilton Head Island, take your knees off our necks. We can't breathe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Scott. From here, we can move on to task force discussion. The first up, remember you have 10 minutes for the first round, and then we'll do a second round. Carolyn McVitie, if you can give your comments, you're up first.
Before we move into the task force, I believe there were some other public comments that was submitted.
Yes, sir. There are public comments via the town website that regard the home occupation section. There's concern about allowable uses that are in there. And as stated before, what's allowed in the base district is what's going to be allowed in the overlay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Scott, for your comments. And I think we are ready to move into a discussion with our task force. As was mentioned previously, I know there was a lot of questions last week, so I hope we can work through some of these things. We're going into order. Is that correct?
Sir.
Ms. McVitie?
Yes. I guess I misunderstood. Last week or whenever we last met, my understanding from the town was that where there was a fraction of acreage, that it would be rounded off either to the next highest or the next lowest. And today, I understand, if I understand you correctly, it will always be to the lowest. Am I understanding that correctly or not?
That's correct. That's the way it is in the LMO. I don't have the specifics of that. Okay, hold on just a minute. Okay, so according to the land management ordinance, when computation of density results in a fraction, the result shall not be rounded up to the nearest whole number. And that's in regard to figuring out density.
I guess what I'm thinking, because this is a unique district, the overlay district, I'm
Right.
thinking that the reason we needed clarification was that because this is a unique district, that it would be rounded up if it was over 1/2, that it would be rounded up to the next higher density. That's my one comment. The other comment, I think Mr. Scott was pretty much on point in many aspects, one of which has been a concern for me particularly, and I know other members of this task force, was with regard to the case studies. Now, you have stated that there are case studies, that we are responding not just to the consultant's conclusions, but also to the actual needs as expressed by the residents who are affected by this. And I have yet to hear of these case studies. And I again raise the question of is there evidence that we need family compounds? How many people would be able to take advantage of this? And the same thing with family subdivisions. And I also would state that part of the frustration, at least from my perspective as a task force member, is that I do feel somewhat that the materials we've received have at times felt like a piecemeal effect. And that's all of my comments.
Okay, in terms of the case studies, I cannot get too specific with case studies. This is not something that I feel comfortable in getting into too specific about. Most of what we receive is the lack of ability to place an additional home. And what staff felt was that in formulating these amendments and also considering what was said in the consultant report, that higher density is needed for particular areas, and to address this with the buffers, the setbacks, that will give you the ability, more land you can build on to get the ability to place that additional home. In terms of the family compound and subdivision, this is not something that you have to do, but it's a good option to have. And in terms of what would fit in terms of that, when this started, there were examples of irregularly shaped small parcels that were configured. We figured these out, tried to see how many more homes would fit on those particular parcels. So in doing that, in addressing buffers and setbacks, and addressing how fewer feet to give for access, we're trying to address the fact that you need more space to build that land on.
Yes, and I want to say that I was impressed with the drawings that you showed us that clearly demarked what the setbacks would look like if it were abutting an industrial area, or if it were abutting a single family dwelling neighborhood, that sort of thing. I thought that was excellent, and it was self-explanatory, and I appreciate the work that went into that. I still do have concerns about the rounding up number. Thank you.
Okay, is that all your comments, Ms. McVitie?
For the moment, thank you.
Thank you. I think next on my list, Sharice, would you like me to do this in order, or are you calling the roll?
You can go ahead and do that.
Okay. Next I have on my list is Ibrahim Abdul Malik.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. The question that I have is centered around the home occupation feature. And the question, I guess, would be, let's say you have a scenario where a native islander has been doing business off of his land prior to the formation of the town, and pretty much like the situation that Palmer is dealing with right now. In as much as it's being suggested that with home occupation, what is being considered as light industrial would have to be done somewhere else. Am I understanding that right?
I don't want to address a specific issue in this forum. There, that's kind of sensitive. What I'll say is that what you don't want your home occupation to do is to be outside of the LMO and to cause, you don't want it to be outside of the LMO. You don't want to go outside of those rules. You don't want it to not be residential in its nature. And to do anything beyond that means that you would need to find a particular use that would serve that need. I appreciate for how hard certain situations are, but I'm sorry, those are the rules that have to be followed when we're talking about what
So
that.
let me make sure I understand then. So you're saying that the non-conformities that we have present in our communities would necessarily have to be removed.
Not as a general, not nonconformities in general.
Okay. But now, but you have a situation where you have a home occupancy that's functioning now. Once the overlay is put into effect, that home or that home occupancy could be threatened. And I'm not asking you to get involved with any specifics, but in general, if there are non-conforming activities in our neighborhoods right now that may fall into the category of light industrial by a definition, whatever that definition is, once the overlay is put in place, then those activities would have to cease.
If you're talking about nonconformities, if the overlay corrects those, it would automatically bring that nonconformity into a conforming use. Now, if you have a nonconformity prior to the overlay and the overlay still does not address your nonconformity, it's still a nonconforming use. It doesn't touch that. If that's what you're talking about, if you're talking about nonconformities. In terms of home occupation, it has to follow specific rules, or else you have to go into a different district to do it. And pretty much that's as far as I can address without talking specifically about specific instances.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Okay. Martha Davis, you have any questions or comments? Hello.
Hello. Am I muted?
I
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm concerned about that home occupation as well. So there's no provision if someone already have a business or whatever before this overlay takes effect that they would be grandfathered in. That's my question. Or they would have to relocate.
Hi, this is Terry Lewis. So I just want to clarify. So if somebody has a business license for a home occupation right now, then they would be allowed to continue that even when the historic neighborhood preservation overlay district is put into place. So that would not change. If they have a business license right now for a home occupation, that could continue, assuming that they're meeting all of the conditions of the home occupation business license.
Okay. Okay, that's my only question.
Okay. Thank you, Ms.
So
Davis.
we can pull up all the way to the end of the tank. The tank is at the
Okay. Palmer Simmons.
Yes, Levon, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Am I being? Very good. Thank you. I guess a couple of quick comments, and I too sort of echo some of the comments we have heard that, definitely the information has been a little sketchy as we have gotten them, even though I think we've made quite a bit of success in moving forward. I think a big feature into what we're doing is people understanding our role. Our role is not that we are trying to make rules or set rules or separate ourselves apart. We are one community that has to live together, but there are deficiencies that have been formed in our community by town rules, which we're trying to adjust. And I think people are missing the real goal of our work. It's not to any rules. Not everyone's going to be happy with those rules. And as we try to move forward, I think that we have to consider what the goal that we're trying to accomplish. Just push aside, and so that's one of the things. And And I'd say that as a general thought. Um, One of the other thoughts I had is if we recall um, back when we had the burning issue, um, one of the issues about burning was that the Native community felt that burning, being able to burn, was an intricate part of uh, how we lived. And if you liken that to take some of those measures that came out that I thought was handled, where we were able to continue to burn and had the rules it worked, where it worked for us. And what happened was that based on the size of the property that an individual may have in our community, and that was a big factor too. I mean, we live on properties unlike any place else in this community. We all, and especially myself, I live on a rather large piece of property that, like any large piece of property or any property, has its advantages and disadvantages. I can speak for me. It takes a whole lot more for me to cut my grass than my neighbors or the people down the street. You know, where someone may use a small push mower, I use a tractor. So I think those kinds of events that happen as we consider home occupancy and otherwise, it'll be uh, wise for us to consider the size, location, and all of a home occupancy, and actually a description. I've come to learn that home occupancy comes with a description as to what you can do or not do, and that description is not always in line as it is written in the LMO. You look at some of the descriptions that come under home occupancy, you'll find that there are quite a bit of discrepancy in some of the descriptions that come along with home occupancy. And another point to consider is that, um, you know, owning land, I think, gives you rights and privileges as a landowner. And I think if we look at the rules and regulations as they are, a license shouldn't take away your given rights to use your property um, in a way that's not quote unquote described or designed, as a business by uh, anybody other than the town. If the town has given you a home occupancy license for a certain business or a certain kind of business, then you should have a right to do that. However, I think there's some when you talk about personal rights and given rights for a property, everyone, should have that right to do without someone trying to define what you're doing, as a business. That's something that we need to consider as we look into how we really function when we issue license or a person's right to their properties. So I think and a lot of it has to come with it. I think residency and how long you've been on a property has some value. Um, Most developments, uh, even though they may have come before the town, they surely haven't come before not any Gullah communities or any Gullah properties. So I think I must kick in this little scenario for one to consider when we look at the rules. Um, you can't move in next to the pig farmer and all of a sudden you move in and you want the pig farmer to change his way of living because all of a sudden you're here and now you don't like it. But, maybe that should have been considered long before one moved to a certain area, because any development has come to Hilton Head, has come after every Gullah community. So for any claim that they've been here this long, that long, however long, surely doesn't carry weight within our community. So we definitely would like for the consideration to be made that what has been our goal is that we definitely have a unique community, and this is why a big part of this discussion is being taking place because of the uniqueness of our communities and how do we actually level the playing field. And I think, knowing what the zoning rules and regulations are is a very big factor. I think there's a disconnect sometimes with what the rules and definitions say they are as compared to things that could or may or might be happening. And people who are not, if I might just use the word smart and know the difference, sometimes, swing the biggest stick. And not knowing sometimes is a very dangerous thing. So I think if we continue to educate ourselves and continue to educate the surrounding communities, this could go quite smooth. But the goal here is to level the playing field and to make our communities harmonious. Harmony comes with understanding and knowing. That knowledge is king. So, LaVon, if I've been heard, I think that's all I have, comments I have for the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Palmer. Next, I have Todd Theodore.
I don't have much more to add. I was going to ask Terry, if this is an overlay district, then does that means the underlying ordinances pertain unless they're superseded by the overlay definitions?
Yes, that's correct.
So there's already a nonconformity section in the ordinance, is that correct?
That is correct.
Does that not address existing activities, businesses that are existing?
No, it does. Both home occupations and other uses that may be non-conforming would be allowed to continue to be non-conforming even with an overlay district on top of them. They would be allowed to remain.
Okay, so maybe that's kind of where I'm a little confused on. I'm trying to interpret, because I'm not sure where we're going with this, because we keep coming up with more questions as we go along. I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where we can vote on this thing. Hopefully we can. That there might have been a little leap of faith kind of during this pandemic of, we set all these priorities and stuff, and then this recommendation on the overlay district kind of came, with a lot of detailed information. And I know we've met 2 or 3 times on this, so I don't know. I don't know, LaVon, if you feel like we're close on this thing. Because obviously, I own property here, but obviously, I don't have the same kind of challenges that say Palmer has. Obviously, he has lots of land and has been here on the island as a native islander. So I'm just trying to interpret all this, and I hope we can get to a point where we can make a motion to recommend it to move forward. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly my hope too, Todd. And it seems that as the more work we do, seems like the more questions we have. I'm trying to find something as well, as you said, it is digestible enough for us to move on. But I can reserve my comments for later, but I share your same concern.
In some instance, and I know this might not make some comfortable, but serving on the LMO committee, as well as you have, LaVon, that we know that that's a dynamic document, and at some point, if we can get this overlay district going, and then it can be modified, as time goes on, to begin to give people opportunities to take advantage of that overlay district. So, I'm not sure we're going to get to a point where it'll be perfect for everybody. So, I'm excited to where we are, and I just hope we can get to a point where we can approve this for moving on through the different various parts of the approval process. But I guess I'm kind of like everybody else. I mean, we've been going on with this for 3 years now, and I'd like to begin to see some progress and begin to give people some opportunities with their land. That's all my comment.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Todd. I believe that I am next up on the list. And I echo a lot of what my colleagues have already expressed, with some optimism, but also with some continued disappointment. I do feel like, as someone made the remark earlier, that we're kind of getting piecemealed here. And I know we had a lot of questions from last week and the last time we met. And I think that one of the things that we have said before, that in trying to deal with some of these challenges that people have with unique properties, is that we were asking staff to be creative and think out of the box, so to speak. I understand that we have to abide by the LMO, but we're also looking for ways to stretch that LMO to accommodate some of these unique properties. I would also make the observation that it's not just people who are Native Islanders or in the Gullah culture who have had challenges with their properties. Historically in the town, we've had other developments and people who have come here to do developments who have had challenges, and we've kind of found ways to make it work. It's not just the Gullah properties that are causing issues, but we seem to have found ways and answers to make those communities and those developments work. Again, referring back to the consultant's report, the finding was that there was some, it was just not as mentioned before, it was not all on equal grounds as far as people having the opportunity to do things with their properties. And I know we had a lot of questions last time as well, and I'm not sure we've answered them all. I guess the biggest question for us is that if we can look at what's being offered, Sharice, and see what it is that we feel comfortable with and moving forward from this point, and if we're able to pull some things out to maybe go back and revisit it at some time in the future, if that's one way to make some progress and move forward, or if we are still yet at a point where we still have more questions than answers. And I would certainly maybe take a survey from my colleagues to see how we all feel about where we are now. But before I even do anything like that, I would like, Sharice, for you to re-emphasize the work that staff has done and what you are suggesting that we approve today. As we said before, I think we feel like we're not always getting all of the full information all the time. We get the little pieces and bits and pieces, and that's why we have so many questions. I recall at the last meeting I asked about having maybe even some legal person here to answer some questions for us, if that was the case. Can you tell me who we have present here that's from the staff?
Hi, this is Terry Lewis again. We had arranged to have our staff attorney available, but unfortunately he had a last minute conflict that he got pulled into. Both he and Curtis Coltrane, the town attorney, have reviewed the proposed amendments and find that they are legal and are ready to move forward if the task force decides that they are ready to do so, but they have gone through the appropriate processes and would be legal if they were ultimately adopted.
So it's just you and Sharice here today? Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, is it just you and Sharice here today from staff?
And Jennifer Ray is here as well. And there are others that are not in this room, but that are viewing the meeting from staff.
Sure. Great. So again, I would like to ask if we could see the proposed recommendations that are coming from staff. Do we still have that presentation, Sharice?
Hey, just a
And
minute.
I guess, okay, and I guess also, do you feel like we've answered all the questions that we had from last week?
Yes, we think we're ready to move on.
So you feel like you've addressed all the questions and concerns that we've had?
All your questions and concerns were taken down, discussed thoroughly, and we weren't here to try to answer all of them.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I just think that it's important for the education of our task force and our community that would certainly help our progress so that we all know exactly what we're voting on and what we're moving forward. As I mentioned in my opening comments, the concern is uh, passing something forward that doesn't work or still has some challenges. And as Todd said, we may not ever get to a perfect document, but we certainly want to make sure that we don't want to put anything in place that's going to continue to hurt the preservation of the culture. I'm not sure I feel like we had a whole lot of creativity and thinking out of the box here. So that's my observation. Um, I want to, at this time, ask any of my task force members if they'd like to weigh back in and feel like, ask them if they feel like we're in a place where we can move uh, this whole document forward or pieces of it, or what concerns we may still have, and see where we are.
I
Yes, Ms.
still
McVitie.
have, I, I have my original concern, which was that my understanding was that where we had a fractional parcel that was more than 50% or more, that it would be rounded up rather than down. And since this is an overlay district and it has specific rules, I would like to see that issue incorporated into this particular overlay district, because I think it is in the spirit of the overlay and of what we are trying to achieve. Secondly, I would say that I realize that the LMO references home occupations. Quite frankly, I reread this section and I think it is woefully deficient. It has a lot of things mentioned in it that are that seem to me to be kind of like a personal judgment or speculation or something like that as to what is offensive, what's an offensive noise, what's an offensive odor, and I just think it could be subject to, just some kind of personal determination. And I note that in the document that we received that we are charged to approve, it reflects the exact same language as the home use. And I just, I am like you, Mr. Chairman. I have the feeling that we haven't exactly thought outside of the box, and they're my comments. And I know I didn't address whether or not I think we are ready to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. McVitie. Any others?
Okay. Am I being heard?
Yes, sir. Palmer Simmons.
Yeah, Levon, I mean, as far as questions from last time, I had a question about the width of the right-of-ways or access roads or whatever. Some there was not some consistency there. So I asked about whether those could be all 20 feet, and a question about the 30-foot setback from the minor arterial roads. So those are just some of the initial questions that I asked early on, and I also alluded to, some of the information having some footnotes that we could better read and see what we were doing. So that once again speaks to just how much information we have at any one time to make a complete kind of decision. However, there's been a lot of work done. We have gotten to this point with a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. But as I said last week, I cautioned us into uh, making a hasty decision to move this forward, even though I feel um, as much work has been done, it could and might be ready to do so. But I'm really, as I say that, so it's rather defensive. Rather, I would say yes. But there's a lot of work, and if we do move forward, do we move forward with a clear understanding that we're moving forward with a base document and decision, and how difficult would it be to take away or add those things that we find that still does not afford us the best opportunity to utilize our properties. And I got to echo what Carolyn said. I think as much of what I said in my initial comments that, home occupancy as we read it currently, excuse me, does have some very subjective um, lines in it where the license and then you get these outer lying definitions of what can and cannot be done. So it is definitely the thing that we're trying to correct by doing what we're doing with these discussions. So I have a roundabout that is where I am. Thank
Um, and did we answer the question last time about the transfer of development rights, Sharice, as well?
Transfer of development rights is its own separate recommendation. It doesn't go with the overlay, and it's not listed as high priority. So that wasn't addressed in this time around.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Malik.
I actually have to go back to work, but I would preferably like to see just the full document with bullet points in it, and have that in hand so that we can, take a look at it and see, okay, what is it that we can find 100% agreement with? And once we determine what we can have 100% agreement with, then perhaps we are at that point where, we can take the next step. And then those items that we aren't in 100% agreement with, because right now, and I would tell you that I'm going to go down and take a look at what home occupancy actually says in more detail, because I think that what I'm hearing now, that there's a potential that the home occupancy and non-conforming activity could be used to target members of our community. And again, if that's going to be the case, then we certainly want to certainly want to not have that happen. So what I'm suggesting is that we get a document in hand outlining point by point what it is being recommended by staff, and allow the task force enough time to review the document in hand, and then based on that, we can make a determination that we are in agreement with 5 out of the 7 of the bullet points 100%. And then those other 2 that we may not be in agreement with will be a part of our next conversation. That's where I'm at. And that said, I do need to ask to be excused. I need to go back to work.
Okay. If Sharice, if Mr. Malik leaves, do we still have a quorum?
We still do. And in terms of the home occupancy section, that can certainly be removed right now. That doesn't need to be included if that's what it takes to get the rest of the recommendations moved forward.
I was going to suggest it. I think several of us already have said that a few times that that needs a little bit more work. And as Ms. Lewis stated earlier, there is already language in the LMO that addresses that. So we're just kind of being redundant by putting the same language in our overlay district. It doesn't change anything. The overlay district is supposed to be something that is different from what the regular LMO does. Even though the LMO is a foundational document, an overlay district means that there are certain things that we're trying to address. So I would suggest that we take that home occupation out for the moment, and also as a point of policy, how this is done. I think a couple of meetings ago, we said that this, the recommendations, and as they go up to the next level, there's still an opportunity for those committees to have some input and make some changes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there other areas of the recommendation? Do you have that presentation for us as far as what staff is presenting?
Okay, this is what was shared a couple of meetings ago in the packet that was sent out to you. These are all of what is being adjusted for, well, what is all being created for the historic overlay district. So here it addresses your setbacks for your minor arterial, all of the streets, access easement, and adjacent uses. So you see the current LMO, which has a higher number for the number of feet, and then you see in its proposed overlay district where the numbers have reductions. So for minor arterial, reducing to 30 feet, all of the streets 10 feet, access easement 5 feet, and adjacent use 5 feet between single family uses, and reduction by 10 between all other uses. This was included in your packet as well as in the public packet as well. So this was a public document that shows you where those reductions are. You have your buffers for your minor arterial and all other streets that shows the minimum planting requirements and the maximum planting requirements. And you see in the proposed overlay district where those planting requirements are requiring the minimum planting requirements unless you have multifamily, and then you will do your maximum planting requirements. When you're doing property use, you want to consider not only your property, but you want to create the appropriate amount of space between different uses. If you can scroll it down a little bit to the next page. Thank you. This continues your buffers to this page for access easement. And also it talks about your impervious cover. It gives you a reduction in your impervious cover an addition of impervious cover in your proposed overlay districts for areas that don't reach the 45% maximum. Again, this gives you more building space. Your building height to accommodate for the fact that you don't have enough width has been increased in most other areas, in your neighborhood commercial areas to 45%. 45 feet. Your access in terms of your current LMO, it shows for you have a reduction of the required number of lots when you're talking about your family subdivision. For 5 or fewer lots within a family subdivision, now you have a minimum 20-foot wide access easement. And this requires an all-weather driving surface rather than just having the requiring you to do a full paved surface. And if I can just see that part again. Also, before you had to put it all in before your subdivision plans were stamped, at this point, you can do it up to the point of development, which you were not able to do before. You had to put it all in before. For 6 or more lots, it's requiring more of a right-of-way, but it's less than it was before. So you're reducing your right-of-way by 10, and again, up to the point of development where before you had to put it all in. So for homes within a family compound, minimum 20-foot wide access easement constructed on all-weather driving surface. So again, with the family compound, family subdivision, those are more lenient towards the feet that's required to put in, and the fact that you don't have to put it all in as you would a regular subdivision. Let's scroll to the next page. Also included are your allowable uses. So current LMO is all uses in the base district, and then all uses in your base district, plus your family compound, plus your family subdivision. Your density has been adjusted, so where you were getting 4 dwelling units per acre in the base district, now those are RM6, so automatically goes to 6 dwelling units and per acre, and 8 dwelling units with at least 5 acres. We can take the home occupation section out. And again, your application review is for eligible properties within the district. Those will go first so that you're not waiting for a period of time for those to go through. So these are the changes that were made for the proposed overlay district. Just for your better viewing, rather than to give you the document that is laden with legal jargon that, it takes 2 or 3 looks to look at. So this is a simplified document into all the changes that go between your current LMO and what is proposed for that district.
Okay. Thank you for that, and I appreciate your being very careful with us as far as the legal documents go, but the education piece is so important for those of us who are laymen, and I do believe we have someone on our task force that has some legal background, so I wouldn't sell us short. So I would suggest that we look at the things that are acceptable, or maybe it's better to look at things that maybe we have a little heartburn with at this point. We're going to take out the home occupation. Can we make a decision today to round up the acreage as Ms. McVitie has suggested?
Hi, this is Terry Lewis again. So if you want to if the task force wants to make that a recommendation, you certainly can. That's definitely a policy decision for town council. So they would weigh
Okay.
that as these amendments move forward.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
that's one bullet.
I don't understand her answer. So if we are to approve, if we are to approve this to move forward today, you know, does that mean we can't put the language in there? Or that we can put the language in there and then the, the planning commission and so forth can make a determination as to whether they think that's feasible or
Yes,
reasonable.
if the task force wants to include that language today, you
We
can,
can?
and then
Okay.
it will be reviewed as it goes through the adoption process.
Okay.
Okay. The other issue I wanted to address was Mr. Simmons Palmer. You had some questions about the inconsistencies with the widths of the right-of-ways and things like that. And I believe a part of that issue too was how that impacted folks' property, even though they were paying taxes on the same amount of land. Again, this goes into a land use question, but I'd like to go back and ask you how you asked that question and what it is that you're looking for as far as being consistent with those right-of-ways or easements. You're muted.
Mike.
Palmer,
Okay.
you're okay. There.
Now I'm good. Yeah, I've just got back in. I guess my concern was is that, if you look at the family compound versus the family subdivision and those two scenarios, it might have been even a third scenario. You have a 30-foot, you have a 20-foot, 30-foot, and it might have been changed from 20 to 30 and from 40 to 30 or whatever, but it was not consistent. And you had the same number of dwelling units. I think it states 6 or more that you could have a 20-foot access to a property that had 6 or more, and if you had another, I think actually the subdivision that had 6 or more, you then needed a 30-foot right of way for the same. And I think the answer last time was a matter of configuration and the utilities. But I mean, I don't think there's any less utilities that goes in for a compound than it would be for a subdivision. I mean, i.e. you would have the lots, but I don't think you have any less utilities. I mean, utilities are underground, most of the time. So I don't think so. My concern was is that you have 20 feet versus 30 feet for that width length otherwise of that property. So you lose that bit of the development footage, footprint, I should say. And the next question was the 30-foot setback from the minor roads. There again, it speaks to the amount of usable land for that which you may want to do, and that would be unique within the development. That would loosen or lessen restrictions that I think can still accomplish the goal and inadequate. I mean, because if a fire truck can get down a 20-foot access for a compound, surely that same 20-foot access with the same requirements, service and all would be good for subdivision. And it mainly speaks to the usage of the land and just how much you can get out of the land. It doesn't, I don't think I think it gives you just a little more living space, if I might say.
Okay, and what would you recommend for today if we were trying to pass this?
Well, I mean, I'd like to see it be more consistent throughout the family subdivision and the family compound, that you would be able to access both with a 20-foot access easement, with the proper surfaces and the sufficient turnaround for fire protection.
Sharice, is that something that we can do today?
I Yeah, so that one.
Sure. So we can't go to 20 feet for the family subdivision. So if you want them to be consistent, it would have to be a 30-foot right of way for both.
And that's totally
Is there
different.
is there a compromise? Well, I mean, I don't know what the rationale is. Uh, the reason why we can't do 20 feet.
So the 20
Again,
foot,
I'm just trying to be creative and think out of the box. I know what's been said. I know what's been stated. I'm challenging all of us to try to work this thing out. So, and education, as I keep saying, we just need to know why instead of just being told, no, you can't do that.
absolutely. And as we discussed last week, the 20-foot access easement is allowed with the family compound because it's all one parcel versus being subdivided into individual parcels. So that's why we can still keep that 20-foot access easement. Although right now, for the way it's written in the LMO today, is that a 20-foot access easement is generally only used to serve 5 address points or fewer. So with the family compound, we're not limiting that to a certain number of address points. We're saying whatever fits on that family compound with density is allowed to use the 20-foot access easement.
But I mean, Terry, and I guess what you're saying is the very reason why I don't see the difference. I mean, just what you said to me spells then why the difference. I mean, you're going to access the lots as well as you would access the compound on the same 20-foot access.
Yes, but when you start to subdivide the property, there are different requirements that those lots have to access a certain type of road. And so with the family compound, it can access that access easement, which then, which is itself is accessed by, probably a paved road. But with a subdivision, because the lots are subdivided, it can't be with that 20-foot access easement.
I don't know
Uh,
that I don't know that I
yeah,
hear difference. I don't know that I hear, I still don't know why I hear that it can't be done. I hear what you say, how it's done, but I don't hear you saying that it can't be done. I mean, it's, you're going to access the lots from some is the 20-foot access going to not allow you to access the lots if it's subdivided?
What it does is, and we've looked at this extensively with
Okay.
engineering and with fire and rescue through our discussions about paving dirt roads. And so that's why I have some familiarity with it. But we've looked at what could be the least that we could go down to and still provide the type of emergency services that we need to provide, as well as provide those other drainage and things like that that need to be provided as well.
Okay, so are those things that you're referring to not provided in the family compound with a
They
20-foot
are,
access?
they
Okay.
are, but they're not captured within that right of way.
Well,
so
okay. All right.
so the question is, if we put that language in there for 20 foot to be consistent, again, when it goes to the next level, is that something that they can look at? And if they need to revise that or correct it, is that something that we can do today?
Say that question again.
If we put what we want as a task force to be consistent, have that right away be 20 foot with compounds and subdivisions, is that something that they can look at the next level, which is the LMO committee?
Just
I'm trying to get us to a place here. I think it's going to take a lot of
Chairman,
courage.
can
Yes,
I just weigh in on that?
yes,
I
please.
I feel that the LMO committee has sufficient knowledge and understanding of the LMO standards and know where to look and how to get there at least, that I would feel that if it were something that the LMO committee should look at, I would feel very confident in sending it to them, knowing that they are sufficiently versed in the requirements to know when to give and take.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Carolyn, but the fact of the matter is, it's not something that they're going to look at if it's not there. I don't think it's going to be
Well,
their
no,
job.
no,
That.
I meant to change it, and with the note that,
Oh, okay. And Carolyn,
like,
you're
yeah,
saying you're saying put it in, and if they
yeah, I'm saying put it in, make it
okay,
consistent, make it both 20 feet. Let the LMO committee look at it, because they have a lot more knowledge than we do, and I would really trust their judgment as long as it was called to their attention.
And that's where I'm
And if,
trying to get to. If we can put that language in there
I would
today,
be yeah, and I
We
would
can
be
do
good with
that. We'll
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
would
We can go ahead and do that. Make it
oh,
consistent.
okay. And I believe that we have already removed the 5-year hold, Sharice, is that correct? Before they can actually sell the property or do something. Didn't we take that language
Yes.
out? Yes. Okay. Um, I think we're at a pretty good place if we can, there's any more questions or input from the task force?
I have one more suggestion, and that is
Yes.
with regard to the home use. I would at least like to reserve that space so that this doesn't fall into the Ethernet, and that somehow or other we never review home use again, because I think at least it's worthy of further discussion among our committee, certainly, and and that's, so I'm not sure if we would put to be determined or some kind of language, so that we can move this forward. But I don't want to lose that, because I think it's something we absolutely need to discuss further.
Okay, is that possible for us to put some language in there that's kind of a placeholder for the home occupation?
Yes.
I have one other question, Sharice. I think we had discussed, yes, sir.
we still didn't address the last little comment I had about the 30-foot setback from the minor roads. I
The
think that was
minor roadway, yeah, I was looking that up in the LMO here.
and I guess if it's consistent throughout the compound and the subdivision, then I might I don't want to pick the thing to death. It was just one of those things that I saw. I mean, I really I'm much of the opinion that we should be able to get to a point where we can move on, but I just wanted to see if it was consistent.
I would recommend that maybe as a starting point, Palmer, the buffer is 25 feet. Is maybe why can't the setback be the same as the buffer?
I like that, Todd. I mean, that's a middle ground.
Sharice, is that doable today?
We can do that.
Let's keep moving.
From 30 feet to 25 feet. And I also want to go back and is you guys good with that before I move on?
I think it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I also had a question. I think we had a question about the upzoning in the Chaplin district. Did we answer that question, or I don't recall what the response was from staff? Sharice, can you help me?
Yes. In the Chaplin district, we can make the marshfront property from 4 dwelling units per acre to 6, so that the upzoning for both the RM2 6 and that marshfront is consistent.
Okay.
And I believe, as I recall, the question was
What staff
that
is
there were,
proposing?
I'm sorry?
It's proposing to make the the marshfront district on the Chaplain side to 6 dwelling units per acre.
And on the other side of that Highway 278, William Hilton Parkway, what was the zoning there? I believe that was part of the question.
I'm going to pull up this map. Can you clarify which area you're talking about?
Okay, the area you just discussed, you said was in the Chaplain Marshfront District.
Yes, this area there.
I'm sorry, which area?
The light blue where it turns in Chaplain is marshfront.
Could you put a pointer on it?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah,
see
there.
where? Okay.
Yes, correct. We
Okay.
can see that.
On the other side of William Hilton Parkway, what is the zoning there?
It's RD,
yeah,
Resort Development, and RM8, which is 8 dwelling units per acre. The light purple area is Resort Development,
Mm-hmm.
and then the brown area is zoned RM8, which is residential.
Okay. Do we have an opportunity to increase that Chaplain zoning up to at least 8 acres?
8 units.
Eight units, I'm sorry.
Units.
one. For which zoning area?
The light blue area.
The marshfront. The water-oriented mixed use, is that it?
Right.
Marshfront?
The two separate zonings. This is marshfront zone, and staff is proposing to do 6 units per acre. When considering this area, you got to consider traffic. You don't want to make that area too dense.
I understand there's a delicate balance with doing that, and at the same time, we're also trying to create some opportunities for folks to be able to do something with their property. So I think there's a little give and take here.
You want to make, instead of the 6 for the marshfront, to 8. Is that, I'm confirming that with you?
Yes.
Okay, you can make that recommendation. This is along 270.
Marshfront mixed.
Okay. I think we're in a pretty good place right now. I'm going to keep repeating myself, and as many of us have already said, we're certainly not going to get to a place where we have a perfect document.
Right.
But I will continue to challenge staff and the task force to be creative and think outside the box. And as we try to work with the balance of land planning and development and use in some of these other areas that have maybe not have the same opportunity for property value, for the ability to divide and subdivide and pass on, and to address the issue of heirs property, and also sustainability and the economic piece of how people use their property in order to preserve the culture. So that's our challenge. I do appreciate the work of staff. I think that we still have a good little bit of work to do, but I think we're in a good place, and I want to see if we can't maybe put some sort of motion together with all of these things that we've discussed and agreed on at this point in place. Can anybody take a stab at this? Make a motion to move this document forward, taking out the home occupation, rounding up the acreage, and to be consistent with the 20-foot right-of-way and upzoning in Chaplin to 8 units per acre, and the setback change from 30 feet to 25 feet.
So
So
moved, Mr. Chairman. I think you just said it.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I was hoping somebody else would be able to make that motion,
No,
but
you did a good job.
okay.
If you want me
Sharice, did you
to,
capture that?
if you want
Go
me
ahead.
to first it, to move that forward, I so move.
I'll second.
Okay. Sharice, did you capture all of this?
Good.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor to move the historic overlay district forward with the recommendations from staff and the revisions from the task force. It's been first and it's been second. I'm sorry, it's been first by Ms. McVitie and it has been second by Mr. Theodore. Is this the point where we ask for more discussion?
Sure, you can ask for more discussion.
Not that we haven't had a lot of discussion already. Okay. And it's so challenging in this virtual format, but we're doing the best we can. So if there's no further discussion, then we are ready for the vote.
Yes, Eileen will do the roll call for that.
Okay.
Ms. McVitie,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes, for the motion.
Mr. Theodore,
Yes,
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
Okay, your motion carries.
Okay.
Motion carries.
The motion carries by unanimous decision here today. I know, right? Did anybody bring the bottle of champagne?
I have it on ice if you want to drop in.
We have to do it individually, virtually. I want to thank my colleagues for working so hard to get to this point. I also have to recognize the work that staff has done. I feel like this is kind of a monumental moment. And I will reiterate the fact that I've encouraged staff to be creative, think out of the box, and please don't be afraid to educate us and to share that information as we move forward. I think that would make these things move a little bit quicker with a little bit better understanding. As I've said in the past, we have to continue to find ways to work together and not in separate rooms as we try to build these bridges and mend some fences. There's been a lot of things that have happened historically, and we're trying to correct some of those things. We do realize that it's not going to be a perfect document, and everybody may not get everything that everybody wants. I also have to recognize and thank the community and the public for their comments and their consideration and their understanding that we are doing the best we can with this little piece of land called Hilton Head Island, and understanding that this is a place that is very special and near and dear to a lot of us. for different reasons. And some of us go back generations, and some of us got here 40, 50, 60 years ago. 40, 50, 60 years ago, some of us would be considered a timeshare. When you talk about folks who've been here 5 or 6 or 7 generations. So I just continue to remind us all that we're doing the best we can to work together to make some progress and to move forward as one island and one community. With that, I will end my comments. Sharice, do you have anything else for us?
Thank you for your hard work and for your recommendation, and we will do our best to see that this moves forward, and we appreciate your work that went into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Thank you, Sharice.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Do we need to call the roll?
Not for adjournment, I don't think.
Thank you so